Have you ever felt truly trapped by a craving? Like an invisible chain just pulls you relentlessly towards something you know isn't good for you.
hmm
Or maybe it just consumes way too much of your precious time and energy.
Yeah, that feeling is familiar to so many people, I think.
Right. It could be that hypnotic pull of just endless social media scrolling, or maybe that insistent, almost primal craving for a particular snack, a sugary treat, or maybe a drink that you know you probably shouldn't have.
Or maybe something less obvious, like needing validation.
Yeah.
That constant sort of gnawing need for external approval, that little buzz when someone likes your post or agrees with you.
Exactly. We've all been there, feeling that undeniable tug, that sense of being personally, well, enslaved to something. It really feels like losing agency, like you're being driven by forces outside your own rational will. So today, we're not just going to talk about willpower in the usual sense. We're actually going to explore a really radical ancient idea rooted deep in Stoic philosophy that can help you understand those invisible chains and, maybe more importantly, break completely free.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how the Stoics didn't just brush these struggles off as like minor character flaws or just annoying bad habits.
Right.
They saw them as fundamental misalignments with our very rational nature. It's like a deeply disordered state of the mind from their perspective.
Okay.
So for them, irrational desire isn't just a weakness, it's a really profound form of personal slavery. We actually become chained to things outside our control.
Wow, okay. Chained.
Yeah, whether it's a literal addiction to substances or to technology, or that fleeting buzz of approval we mentioned, or maybe even being chained to the outcome of our most sincere efforts.
Mm.
So this deep dive into temperance, or sophrosyne, as the ancient Greeks called it, from a Stoic viewpoint, it isn't just about self-control, which often feels like a constant battle against yourself.
Right. Yeah, exhausting.
Exactly. No, this is about something much deeper. It's about achieving a profound and lasting liberation. So our mission today really is to equip you with practical Stoic strategies drawn from literally thousands of years of wisdom for understanding your deepest triggers, reevaluating your desires, and ultimately breaking free from those destructive habits and the cravings that bind you.
And to guide us on this incredibly important journey, we're drawing from some truly timeless wisdom. Our insights today, they're pulled directly from the foundational texts of Stoicism. We're talking about key figures like Epictetus, whose practical advice just cuts straight to the core of human experience.
I'm very direct.
Very direct. And Seneca, the philosopher-statesman, his letters offer these really profound psychological insights. And of course, the Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius, who in his meditations gave us this rare glimpse into the daily mental practices of a Stoic sage.
Yeah, his personal journal, essentially.
Right. And we'll also touch on the less famous but still hugely influential Musonius Rufus, and we'll weave in some modern interpretations from thinkers like William Irvine and Lawrence Becker just to help us all truly get a handle on how to conquer desire and addiction, not just through brute force, like you said, but through profound insight and a really radical shift in perspective.
Okay, so let's pull back the curtain on these invisible chains then. To really break free, the Stoics are saying, first, we have to understand what is binding us.
Right. Diagnosis first.
Exactly. And for that, we turn to maybe the most fundamental Stoic principle of all. It's famously articulated by Epictetus. He opens his handbook, the Enchiridion, with this assertion that on the surface sounds incredibly simple.
Deceptively simple.
Totally. He just says, some things are up to us and some are not up to us, but, don't let that simplicity fool you. This isn't just an observation. It's like a mental sorting mechanism, a real game changer that asks you to honestly sort out what's truly within your sphere of influence and what actually lies outside it.
And this first step, as we're going to see, is really where the path to freedom begins. So when Epictetus talks about what's up to us, what's he really getting at there?
He's talking about our prohairesis, which is our faculty of choice, our volition. It's our internal landscape. So specifically, our opinions, our impulses or motivations, our desires and our aversions, the things we lean towards and the things we try to avoid.
Okay, so the inner stuff.
Exactly. These are the things that originate within our minds, within our will, and crucially, are fully within our power to direct. They are, in the Stoic view, the only true good, the only true evil, because they're the only things that can't be taken from us or forced upon us by external circumstances. They really form the bedrock of our character.
Okay, that makes sense. The internal world is mine.
Right, and that clear line, that delineation, is where the real work starts, isn't it? Because understanding what's not up to us, that's often the harder pill to swallow.
Yeah, I bet. So what falls into that category?
Well, Epictetus is very clear. He includes our body, its health, its appearance, how long it lasts, our possessions, whether we have few or many, our reputation, what other people think of us, external outcomes in general, like winning a competition or getting a promotion, even the lives and well-being of our friends and relatives, or whether our spouse loves us.
Wow. Okay. So basically, almost everything external.
Pretty much anything outside our direct volitional control. These are all part of the external world, the things over which we have, ultimately, little to no complete control. And what's key here is that the Stoics weren't just observing this. They were making a profound ethical claim,
Which is?
which is that the illusion that we can control these external things, or worse, that our happiness depends on them, that's the root cause of so much human suffering and what keeps us feeling chained. It's a fundamental misapplication of our reason, a deep misunderstanding of where our true power actually lies.
Oh.
We spend enormous energy trying to steer things we can't fully steer, and then we wonder why we feel so exhausted and frustrated all the time.
So if we're constantly reaching for things we can't truly control, what's the actual toll? You said suffering, but Epictetus gets pretty specific, right? What's his warning about that misdirected effort?
Oh, his warning is stark
Mm.
and really insightful. He's incredibly blunt about it. Wanting things that are not up to us is simply foolish. Period.
Okay. Foolish.
Foolish. And it leads directly to what he calls misfortune. It causes us to feel thwarted, miserable, and upset.
Hmm.
Just think about it in your own life. If your sense of well-being, your inner peace, relies on getting that promotion someone else decides on,
Right.
or on a loved one always being healthy and present, which is impossible,
Yeah.
or on a specific political outcome happening, you're essentially handing over the keys to your peace of mind to external unpredictable forces. You're giving away your power.
That's a scary thought, giving away your power like
It
that.
is. Epictetus uses the example of wanting friends and relatives to live forever. Now, that's
Yeah.
completely natural, deeply human desire, right?
Yeah.
But it's fundamentally foolish in the Stoic sense because it's simply not up to us. We cannot control mortality.
Mm.
And the same logic applies to wanting your partner to always love you in exactly the way you want, or wanting your boss to react positively to every single thing you do, or even wanting your social media post to get a certain number of likes.
Mm.
No matter how hard you try to influence these things, you could fail. And then you're left deeply unhappy and frustrated because your tranquility was tied to something outside your direct control. You've essentially become enslaved to an outcome you couldn't guarantee.
That really raises a crucial question then, doesn't it? How much mental energy do we, you, listening right now, waste pursuing things that are, let's be honest, beyond our full control?
A lot, usually.
Yeah. The Stoics believe this constant pursuit is a direct path to unhappiness, precisely because it makes our tranquility totally dependent on these external, unpredictable forces. But, crucially, this isn't an invitation to just give up,
Yeah.
right? It's not about apathy.
No, absolutely not apathy. That's one of the biggest, most persistent misconceptions about Stoicism. It's not about resignation in a passive sense.
So what's the alternative? What's this powerful Stoic shift towards internalizing our goals?
It's about a strategic redirection of our efforts and desires. So instead of focusing on external outcomes we can't guarantee, the Stoics propose this powerful shift, internalizing our goals. Let's take your example of wanting your partner to love you. That external outcome, their feelings, isn't entirely within your control.
Right.
So the goal shouldn't be making them love you. Instead, your internal Stoic goal should be something like to behave to the best of my ability in a lovable, kind, and supportive manner. That is entirely within your control.
Okay, I see the shift. Focus on my actions.
Exactly. Or consider an aspiring artist. Instead of the external goal of making my art famous and selling 1 million copies, which depends on critics, the market, luck.
Yeah, so many factors.
The internal goal becomes to pour my best effort and integrity into creating meaningful art, to develop my craft to the highest possible standard I can achieve. That's controllable. Similarly with your boss, your internal goal should be to do my job to the best of my ability, to be diligent, professional, ethical, regardless of how they react afterwards.
Okay.
This strategy is so crucial because these internal goals are entirely within your control. You can always choose your behavior, your effort, your attitude, your intentions. By focusing there, you preserve your tranquility, your inner peace, while still engaging effectively with situations where you only have partial influence over the outcome. The focus shifts from the uncertain result to this certain virtuous effort. Now, this takes immense discipline, let's be clear, because our instincts, our culture, everything constantly pulls us towards seeking external validation and results.
That's a really profound and, yeah, incredibly challenging shift in mindset. So, for you listening, just take a moment. How often do you set goals that rely entirely on other people or on external circumstances like market trends or social recognition or even just the weather?
Hmm.
What if you really tried shifting that focus inward, towards your own actions, your own character, your own responses? Just imagine the potential reduction in stress, in anxiety, and disappointment if your most important aspirations, your truest measure of success, were entirely within your own power to achieve.
It's about building that inner fortress.
Yeah, exactly. An inner fortress against the unpredictable winds of the external world, making sure your happiness isn't just a hostage to fortune. Okay, so moving from those external events to our equally complex internal world, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The Stoics are telling us that these deep, often overwhelming feelings we experience, anger, jealousy, even intense cravings, they aren't just random reactions happening to us. They're somehow rooted in what we decide about a situation. Can you elaborate on this core Stoic idea that emotions are actually a species of judgment?
Absolutely. This is fundamental to understanding Stoic psychology and their approach to temperance. They define emotions not merely as fleeting feelings or sensations, but as specific species of judgment.
Okay, judgment.
Think of it like this. A raw sensory input hits you. Someone cuts you off abruptly in traffic. That initial perception, maybe startled feeling, that's just an impression, a fantasia. It's automatic, precognitive.
Right, just data coming in.
Exactly. But it's only when your rational mind agrees with the immediate, perhaps instinctive thought that follows something like, this person harmed me intentionally, and that's an outrage. That act of agreement, that's the intellectual assent, psychotathesis. That's the judgment that turns a mere impression into full-blown anger.
Ah, so I have to kind of sign off on the interpretation.
Precisely. It's the point where you choose to validate the negative interpretation, making it a powerful judgment that then gives rise to the emotion. For instance, it's not just thinking someone is unfortunate, it's actively feeling pity. And that feeling implies you've assented to a judgment about their misfortune, deeming it truly bad or undeserved.
Okay.
Similarly, it's not just thinking you've been harmed, it's feeling anger, which means you've judged that the harm is real, significant, maybe intentional, and definitely bad. This act of judgment, this assent, is the critical pivot point for our entire emotional experience according to the Stoics.
So it's not the event itself, the getting cut off, but my internal narrative, my interpretation, my judgment about it that actually creates the anger.
Wow. And I know Seneca in particular had some pretty strong words for these uncontrolled emotions, didn't he? He called them a temporary madness. What did he mean by that?
He did indeed. Seneca eloquently describes intense emotions like anger, overwhelming desire, or jealousy as a temporary madness. He even likens the experience to being thrown off the top of a building and hurtling towards the ground, completely out of control.
That's vivid.
It is. He means that when we're in the grip of such an emotion, our reason, our most precious human faculty, our ability to think clearly and make sound judgments, is completely compromised. It's hijacked.
Yeah.
We act impulsively, irrationally, often destructively. Have you ever seen someone, or maybe even yourself, lash out in a fit of pique, saying things they immediately regret?
Oh, absolutely. Or spend hours stewing in jealousy, just unable to focus on anything productive. That's exactly what Seneca is talking about. When these powerful emotions take over, they compromise the entire mind, clouding our judgment, dictating our thoughts, and leading us to actions we later wish we could take back. The Stoics were acutely aware of this destructive power of uncontrolled passion, and they sought to understand its mechanism precisely so they could figure out how to combat it. They believe these passions arise from a misdirection of our rational assent, a failure to properly exercise our faculty of choice, our prohairesis.
Okay, so it's like reason gets sidelined. And Seneca actually breaks down this whole process of passion taking over into three distinct movements, right? Almost like a roadmap, which could give us a place to intervene. Can you walk us through those three stages, maybe focusing on that critical second movement where the choice happens?
Yes, this three-stage model from Seneca is a really crucial framework for understanding and ultimately controlling our emotional responses, including cravings. The first movement is the initial impression, that automatic, immediate, often involuntary reaction to some stimulus. It's the physiological jolt, the raw sensory input hitting you.
Okay.
Think back to seeing that car splash you on a rainy day. The initial sight and sound, maybe a physical flinch or a jolt of surprise, perhaps your heart rate jumps slightly. This is precognitive. It's just data hitting your senses. The Stoics believe this first movement is natural and largely unavoidable. It just happens to us. We don't choose it.
Got it, the initial hit.
Right. Now, the second movement, and this is the absolute critical moment, this is where our power lies.
Mm.
It's the voluntary judgment of assent. This is where we choose to agree with or confirm that initial impression, crucially adding a value judgment to it.
Ah, the signing off part again.
Exactly. So instead of just the neutral observation, oh, I just got splashed, you might immediately, and often almost unconsciously, assent to the thought. That idiot ruined my entire day. How dare they be so careless? This is terrible. This is where your rational faculty, your prohairesis, your power of choice comes into play.
Okay.
And the Stoics teach that the wise person, or the person training to be wise, recognizes these initial impressions for what they are. Just impressions, maybe accurate, maybe misleading. And they consciously refuse to assent to the judgment that something truly bad or outrageous or unbearable has happened. They view these impressions with a kind of studied indifference, a calm detachment, and they let them go, refusing to validate the negative interpretation.
That sounds hard.
It takes immense practice and self-awareness, absolutely. But this is the point of power, the fork in the road. It's where you decide whether to escalate or de-escalate internally.
Okay, so what happens if we miss that chance? If we do assent to the negative judgment?
If we fail to intervene there, if we give our assent to that negative judgment, this is terrible, then the third movement inevitably follows. Full-blown passion. This is where the emotion really takes hold. It manifests as intense rage or deep frustration. Maybe revenge fantasies start playing out in your head, or deep resentment builds, or perhaps crushing sadness or anxiety washes over you. This is the state Seneca calls temporary madness, where the emotion takes over our entire mind, dictates our thoughts, and very often dictates our actions. And the profound insight here, especially relative to temperance and addiction, is that anxiety, anger, and many powerful cravings thrive on a kind of static, imagined catastrophe or an unchallenged negative interpretation. They rely on us believing that the feeling is permanent or the object of desire is essential for our well-being. By actively training your mind to withhold assent at that crucial second stage, you expose the cravings or the anger's temporal limits, you see it more clearly, and you reclaim your internal power. It's not just about reducing anxiety, it's about revealing the illusion of endless suffering or absolute necessity that often fuels our worst habits and addictions.
Wow, that's a truly powerful concept. Because if we really can intervene at this crucial ascent stage, yeah, that has massive implications for our ability to manage even the most powerful desires, the most ingrained reactive habits. So for the Stoics, boiling it down, what then is the absolute core problem that leads to this kind of emotional slavery, this being chained by desire?
The core problem, then, boils down precisely to this insight. Whatever the external thing may be, the value which we set upon it places us in subjection to others, or more broadly, in subjection to things outside our control.
Okay, explain that a bit more. The value we set.
Right. If your happiness, your tranquility, your sense of self-worth depends fundamentally on external things, whether it's money or another person's affection or a tyrant's approval or the success of your business venture or even the sheer desire for tranquility itself pursued as an external outcome you must grasp,
Ah, okay.
then you become mastered by things outside your own will. This is the precise mechanism of desire as slavery. When we allow our internal state, our peace of mind, to be dictated by what the Stoics called indifference, meaning things that are not inherently good or bad in themselves, but merely preferred, like health, or dispreferred, like sickness, we effectively relinquish our freedom. We become like a puppet dancing on the strings of circumstances or other people's opinions or fleeting pleasures or just the unpredictable whims of fortune. The very moment we say internally or externally, I must have that, whether that is a substance, a specific job title, a particular social status, or someone's approval, we're handing over a piece of our internal freedom, our autonomy. We become vulnerable.
Okay, so we've got the diagnosis. Desire, left unchecked, particularly when it's attached to these external things, these indifference, can become a genuine form of slavery. Now, the crucial part, how do we actually break those chains?
Right, the practical application.
Yeah. The Stoics believed it requires diligent daily practice, what they called ascesis. Can you unpack that term a bit? It sounds intense.
It does, and it is, in a way. Ascesis is an ancient Greek term that means exercise, practice, or discipline training. Think of an athlete training their body for peak performance day in, day out. The Stoics applied the same concept to training the mind, the character, the will.
Okay, mental training.
Exactly, and they were very clear. Practicing Stoicism won't be easy. It will take effort. It requires significant willpower, especially at first. This means consciously working to abandon old, often deeply ingrained goals like the relentless pursuit of fame or fortune or constant external pleasure, and actively replacing them with a new, deeply considered internal goal. The attainment of tranquility, of ataraxia, that inner peace and freedom.
So it's not just about adding a new habit. It's like a fundamental reorientation.
It really is. It's a fundamental reorientation of your life's purpose, shifting your deepest values towards what is truly within your control, your own judgments, your own actions, your own character.
Now, you said it takes effort, which makes sense, but there's a paradox here, isn't there? It's something Musonius Rufus pointed out about the effort involved.
Yes, and this is a brilliant and motivating insight from Musonius Rufus. He points out this profound paradox of effort. Although it certainly takes effort to practice Stoicism, it will often require considerably more effort in the long run not to practice it.
Okay, wait. More effort not to practice it. How does that work?
Think about the sheer energy expended in managing the consequences of not practicing temperance and wisdom. Consider, for example, the immense time, the emotional energy, the elaborate deceptions, the constant anxiety of discovery, the inevitable heartache and chaos that often follows from engaging in, say, illicit love affairs.
Yeah.
Musonius argues that that toll far outweighs the focused effort it would take to develop the self-control needed to avoid such affairs and instead cultivate healthy, virtuous relationships.
Okay, I can see that.
Or think about the relentless striving to become wealthy, far beyond what's necessary. The endless hours spent chasing status symbols, the constant stress of market fluctuations, the fear of losing it all. Compare that to the effort required to train oneself to be satisfied with what one already has, to cultivate a sense of inner abundance rather than external accumulation.
Right. The constant chase versus finding contentment.
Exactly. Or instead of seeking fame through relentless self-promotion and constantly worrying about public opinion, imagine the effort saved by simply overcoming the craving for admiration in the first place. Instead of plotting against someone you envy, imagine the relief and energy saved by overcoming the envy itself. Instead of knocking yourself out trying to achieve fleeting popularity, investing that same energy in cultivating a few true, deep friendships. So the Stoics are essentially saying that the path that looks easy, the path of giving in to every craving, every impulse, every external pursuit, is actually the harder, more draining path in the long run. It leads to constant internal struggle, dissatisfaction, and turmoil. The discipline of self-mastery, of ascesis, though challenging upfront, ultimately leads to less effort battling internal chaos and external frustrations. It secures a deeper, more sustainable peace.
That's a really powerful reframing of effort. It makes the hard work of self-discipline seem like the more efficient choice, long term.
It is, in their view. It's an investment in future tranquility.
Okay, so one of the absolute foundational practices for this self-mastery, for applying this ascesis daily, is the evening meditation. This is something recommended by Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. Now, this isn't necessarily about sitting cross-legged and chanting them.
Right.
It's more like a rigorous daily review.
Precisely. It's not about emptying the mind, but about examining it. The process is remarkably simple in concept, yet incredibly powerful in practice. Before going to sleep, you review your day. You honestly, rigorously examine your actions, your words, your reactions, and crucially, your judgments throughout the day.
Okay, like a mental inventory.
Exactly. Where did you act wisely? Where did you align with your values? And just as importantly, where did you fall short? Where did you let an irrational desire or emotion take the wheel? Where did you assent to a false impression?
But the purpose isn't just to beat yourself up about mistakes, right?
Absolutely not. The purpose isn't self-flagellation or endlessly dwelling on past failings, because remember, the past is not in our control either. Instead, the goal is to achieve that profound peace of mind that comes from having honestly examined our deeds of the day. It's about taking responsibility. You might ask yourself specific questions. What bad habit did I resist today? What good deed did I perhaps miss an opportunity for? How could I have responded more virtuously, more rationally in that challenging situation with my colleague? Seneca himself, describing his own practice, wrote something like, I review my entire day, I hide nothing from myself, I pass nothing by. And then, regarding a mistake, he'd say, I pardon you this time, see that you never do that anymore. It's about self-correction, learning from the missteps without judgment, and then crucially, orienting yourself toward better conduct tomorrow, reinforcing your commitment to virtue.
Yeah, I can see how that would bring peace. Imagine ending each day with a genuinely clear conscience, knowing you've taken responsibility for any missteps, however small, and you're actively preparing to be a little bit better tomorrow.
That in itself is a powerful motivator for temperance and a deep source of internal calm. It's fundamentally about building a consistent habit of self-awareness and continuous improvement.
Okay, so beyond this daily reflection, the Stoics also offer these really powerful techniques for actively changing our perspective, almost like rewiring our habitual reactions to the world and to our own cravings. One strategy that always stands out, maybe because it sounds quite counterintuitive, is negative visualization. This involves deliberately imagining how things could actually go worse in your life, maybe even contemplating your own death or the loss of loved ones. Why on earth would they suggest such a seemingly morbid practice?
Yeah, what's truly fascinating here is exactly how counterintuitive this practice feels to our modern sensibilities,
Hmm.
and it's very often misunderstood. It is absolutely not about being morbid or cultivating pessimism.
Okay, good.
The real purpose is to cultivate profound gratitude and resilience by regularly, deliberately considering the potential loss of things we often take for granted: our health, our loved ones, our possessions, our freedom, even our very existence at heart. The Stoics believed we actually increase our chance of experiencing joy.
Increase joy by thinking about loss. How?
Because it forces us to realize how precious and transient these things truly are. It stops us from taking them for granted. Instead of constantly desiring more or worrying about losing what we have, we learn to deeply appreciate what we have right now, in this moment.
Ah, okay. Appreciation through contrast.
Exactly. Imagine waking up each day and briefly,
Yeah.
consciously considering that this might be your last day, or that your loved ones, your job, your home might not be there tomorrow. Again, this isn't meant to induce fear or anxiety, but rather to sharpen your focus, to encourage you to live more fully, more intentionally in the present, to act with greater kindness and purpose today. It also builds resilience. By mentally rehearsing potential losses, understanding the transient nature of all external things, when losses do inevitably occur, because we are mentally better prepared. We've already contemplated the possibility, so it doesn't shatter our world quite as much.
It sort of inoculates you against the shock.
In a way, yes. Epictetus would say things like, when you kiss your child, remind yourself they are mortal, not to be cold, but to cherish the present moment more fully and be prepared for nature's course. And as William Irvine points out, in our youth, it takes conscious effort to contemplate our own death. But in our later years, it often takes effort not to contemplate it. So old age, in a sense, naturally forces us to do something the Stoics argued we should have been doing intentionally all along, living mindfully and appreciating every moment.
That really reframes what many might instinctively see as a dark thought into something that's actually a profound source of appreciation and inner strength. Okay, another really powerful shift in perspective they used is what modern scholars sometimes call the view from above or the outside view. This involves picturing your current situation, maybe your problems, or even a really intense craving from a very high vantage point, like imagining it as a tiny, almost insignificant part of the vastness of the earth, or even the whole sweep of time and space. How does this kind of cosmic perspective help us specifically with temperance and managing desires?
Oh, it's incredibly effective for gaining perspective and emotional distance. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, practiced this frequently in his meditations. He'd urge himself to look upon earthly things below as if from someplace above them. He'd visualize herds, armies, farms, weddings, divorces, births, deaths, all human affairs. A mixture of everything and an order composed of contraries.
Wow, seeing it all from orbit, basically.
It's essentially, yes, or even further out. The benefit of this practice is to help you gain equanimity. That means viewing external events, even things like physical pain, illness, or an overwhelming desire that feels all-consuming in the moment, with greater indifference. You achieve this by shrinking their perceived significance in the grand scheme of things.
So it puts your personal drama in context.
Precisely. When a desire feels overwhelming, maybe a craving for a cigarette or for checking your phone again, or when a problem seems absolutely insurmountable, this practice allows you to zoom way out. Imagine that moment of intense irritation. Maybe someone said something annoying, or that powerful craving for comfort food. Now picture yourself from high above the building you're in, then from the altitude of a plane, then from orbit. Then maybe picture the entire galaxy. How truly significant is this specific craving, this momentary annoyance, this particular setback in the grand sweep of your entire life, let alone the universe?
Yeah, it suddenly seems pretty small.
Right. It helps to put things into proportion, which drastically reduces their emotional grip on you. It's a powerful antidote to getting bogged down in the minutiae of daily frustrations and those desires that feel huge but are actually quite fleeting or insignificant in the larger context.
That's a great mental tool for putting things in proportion. Okay, so we've talked about shrinking the perceived importance of the external world and our place in it. But what about the storm brewing right inside us? What about those immediate, powerful impressions and judgments that just hit us before we even think? The Stoics knew these were critical battlegrounds, right? And they developed some really sophisticated techniques for managing that inner dialogue, which leads us to something we now call cognitive distancing. How does that work?
Indeed, this is an absolute cornerstone of daily Stoic practice.
Yeah.
Cognitive distancing is essentially about creating space, separating your conscious mind from the immediate sensations or events that bombard it. The core idea, hammered home again and again by Epictetus, is to constantly remind yourself that it is not things or sensations that upset us, but our judgments about them.
Right, the judgment again.
Always the judgment. Let's go back to that example of a car splashing you with muddy water.
Yeah.
The immediate unthinking reaction might be, you idiot, you ruined my entire day, this is awful. That's attaching a huge negative value judgment. Cognitive distancing means inserting a pause, stepping back mentally, and calmly observing the fact, oh, I just got splashed. Full stop.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Exactly. This simple act of dispassionately observing the event rather than immediately layering on a negative interpretation or a dramatic narrative prevents that cascade of negative emotions from starting. It allows your reason, your rational mind, to stay in the driver's seat rather than being swept away by an automatic, unexamined emotional response. It's about creating a crucial mental space between the external event or internal urge and your reaction to it.
So, in a way, we become our own inner editors. We're carefully curating the story we tell ourselves about what's happening around us and inside us. And the story we choose, that dictates our emotional response.
Beautifully put. That's exactly it.
And Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius were particularly insistent on stripping value judgments from our observations, weren't they? Can you give us a few more examples of how this looks in practice, maybe especially how it helps resist cravings?
Absolutely. They constantly advise us to stick to the bare facts, to describe things objectively without the emotional or moralistic overlay. So if a ship carrying your goods is lost at sea, you simply state the fact. The ship is lost. You don't immediately leap to, this is awful, I'm ruined, it's a catastrophe,
Yeah.
which is a value judgment.
Okay.
If someone has drunk a lot of wine, you state he drank a lot of wine. You don't immediately judge he's done something terrible and is a disgrace. You separate the action from the moral evaluation, at least initially. The difference feels subtle, but it's profound psychologically.
How does it help with cravings specifically?
By refusing to add these unnecessary, often emotionally charged value judgments, we rob external events, and importantly, our internal impulses toward them of their power to disturb us and hijack our reason. It prevents desires from escalating into destructive forces. Think about a strong craving for a particular food, say a rich chocolate cake. Instead of thinking, oh, I desperately need that cake, it will make me feel so much better, it's the only thing that will help, which is loaded with value judgments and potentially false promises, you practice cognitive distancing and strip the judgment.
Oh.
You observe, there is a piece of cake, it is made of flour, sugar, eggs, and chocolate. Eating it will provide a brief sensation of sweetness. By stripping away the emotional baggage, need make me feel better, and the exaggerated promise of gratification, you diminish its magnetic pull. It becomes just cake, not a solution to your problems or a source of ultimate happiness.
Right, it loses its magic.
Exactly. It's an active, rational interrogation of our impulses rather than being blindly led by them. It reconnects us to objective reality and keeps our rational mind in charge.
That's a really concrete, actionable way to apply that principle. Okay, another powerful technique for managing our thoughts, particularly when we're facing anxiety about the future or maybe a burgeoning craving that feels like it's snowballing, is decatastrophizing. This involves taking a feared event or maybe the consequence of not giving in to a craving and repeatedly asking yourself, okay, and then what? What next? Can you walk us through how this works, maybe with a common modern example?
Decatastrophizing is a brilliant technique, and yes, particularly useful for the modern mind, which seems so prone to anxiety spirals and rumination. The goal is to mentally move the narrative past the imagined worst possible point. You force yourself to imagine the realistic subsequent events, rather than getting stuck looping on the single catastrophic peak of worry or deprivation.
Okay.
See, anxiety, and also many intense cravings, often thrive on this implicit idea that the upsetting experience, either the feared event or the discomfort of resisting the craving, is somehow timeless, permanent, and utterly unresolvable. Decatastrophizing challenges that.
So give me an example.
Okay, Let's say you're facing a really important work deadline, and the anxiety starts to snowball. Your mind might jump straight to, I'm definitely going to miss the deadline. My boss will be furious. They'll fire me. I'll lose my job. I'll end up homeless. It escalates fast.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Right. With decatastrophizing, you actively interrupt that catastrophic spiral. You ask, okay, let's assume I do miss the deadline. What actually happens next? Well, my boss will probably be upset. Maybe I get a formal warning. Okay, what next? I'll have to apologize, explain what happened, maybe work extra hard for a while to regain trust. Okay, and what next? Well, I'll probably learn a valuable lesson from this mistake, maybe improve my time management skills for the future.
It forces you to think it through realistically.
Exactly. By systematically thinking through the before, during, and after phase, as the Stoics might say, of any potential difficulty or even the perceived difficulty of resisting a strong urge, you often find that the anxiety starts to abate. The craving for immediate escape or relief might lose its desperate urgency. You realize that even if the worst-case scenario or something close to it happens, life continues. You can cope. You can adapt. It helps break that cycle of escalating worry or panic by introducing a sense of sequence, consequence, and eventual resolution, even if that resolution isn't perfectly ideal. It brings you back down to a more rational assessment of the actual stakes.
That's incredibly practical, especially for reining in that runaway train of catastrophic thinking that can fuel both anxiety and impulsive behavior. Now, when it comes to tackling specific cravings head on, Marcus Aurelius offers a very direct, almost scientific approach to introspection. He suggests that when you're faced with something you crave, you should actively question it, dissect it with reason. What are those key questions he prompts us to ask ourselves, and how do they help expose the true nature, or maybe the lack of substance, behind our desires?
Yes, this is a fantastic example of applying reason directly as an antidote to impulsive desire. Marcus Aurelius essentially tells us to put the object of our craving under a rational microscope. When you feel that strong pull toward something, he suggests you pause and ask yourself,
What is it really made of? Deconstruct it. This immediately strips away the romantic allure, reducing the object to its bare material components.
like we talked about with the cake.
Exactly. For a craving for a fancy, expensive meal, it's not delicious, satisfying, a symbol of success. It's fundamentally just cooked animal flesh, some processed carbohydrates, some plant matter, various spices. For that shiny new gadget you desperately want, it's plastic, metal, silicon chips, glass. For the craving for social media approval, the likes are just digital signals interpreted by software on a screen. By stripping it down to its bare physical or factual elements, you diminish its perceived magical power and reconnect with its objective, often quite mundane reality.
Takes the glamour out of it.
Precisely. Second, he says, ask, how long will its pleasure or effect actually last? Many, if not most, things we intensely crave offer only fleeting, ephemeral satisfaction. The pleasure of that rich food, the novelty of a new purchase, the momentary buzz of a social media notification, it's often incredibly short-lived, isn't it?
Yeah, gone in an instant sometimes.
Right. Recognizing its short duration diminishes its power to promise lasting happiness or relief. If the craving is for a substance, the immediate high is often followed by a crash, or guilt, or negative health consequences. Why invest so much emotional energy, so much potential regret into something so fundamentally transient?
Good question.
And third, crucially, Marcus advises asking, which virtue, if any, does indulging this craving engage or express? Does giving in to this desire align with wisdom? Does it require courage? Usually the opposite. Is it just? Is it temperate? In other words, does it make you a better, more rational, more virtuous human being? Does it serve your highest self, your eudaimonia?
And the answer is often.
Often the honest answer is none. Or worse, it actively undermines a virtue, like temperance or wisdom. If the answer is none, then it becomes crystal clear that indulging this craving is likely just a distraction from your true good, from your pursuit of a genuinely flourishing life. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, this whole questioning process is about shining the bright light of reason directly onto our impulses, rather than just being blindly led by them down paths we might regret. It's a proactive, rational interrogation of our desires, aiming to expose their true nature and their actual value, or often, their lack thereof. It's a profound way to disarm the power of addiction and impulsive desire at its root.
Okay, so beyond managing our internal thoughts and judgments, the Stoics also provided really practical strategies for actively engaging with, or sometimes strategically removing, the external triggers that set off these cravings or undesirable emotions. One important concept here is what psychologists now call emotional habituation, which actually forms the basis of modern exposure therapy for phobias and anxiety. But the Stoics were doing something similar, weren't they? This isn't about avoidance. It sounds more like strategic confrontation. How did they advocate for this, and how does it build resilience against our triggers?
Yes, this is another area where ancient Stoic practice remarkably anticipates modern psychological understanding. They practice what they called the premeditation of adversity, premeditatio malorum, which often involved intentionally exposing themselves, sometimes physically in small doses, but very often just in imagination, to feared or tempting situations. The goal was precisely to develop emotional resilience, to habituate themselves to the discomfort.
So mental rehearsal of facing the trigger.
Exactly. For instance, if you have a powerful craving for alcohol that's consistently triggered by certain social situations, like office parties or meeting specific friends at a bar, a stoic approach might involve mentally rehearsing being in that exact situation. You'd vividly imagine feeling the initial pull, the social pressure, the desire for the drink, and then you'd mentally rehearse calmly, confidently, choosing a non-alcoholic drink instead, or perhaps choosing to leave the situation gracefully after a short time.
Building the mental muscle beforehand.
Precisely. And the robust finding in modern psychotherapy research confirms exactly what the Stoics intuited. Anxiety, and also the intensity of cravings, tends to naturally decrease or abate during prolonged, repeated exposure to feared or tempting situations, provided you don't actually give in or escape prematurely. By patiently facing your fears or triggers, perhaps starting with less intense versions and gradually increasing the challenge, by gently and repeatedly exposing yourself to these triggers without succumbing, you literally build up your mental muscle. You recalibrate your response.
So the triggers lose their power over time.
That's the goal. It's about building up your internal fortitude so that those triggers are eventually transformed from seemingly insurmountable obstacles that derail you every time into mere nudges, background noise that you can easily notice and then consciously dismiss. It's strategic confrontation leading to habituation and resilience.
That sounds like a really powerful, maybe long-term strategy for defanging those triggers. Now, complementing that idea of confrontation, Seneca also advises a more direct, sometimes necessary approach for certain triggers. He says, quite bluntly, always shun that which makes you angry. And we could probably broaden that to say, shun that which consistently makes you succumb to irrational desire or harmful habits. This seems to be about recognizing your personal provocations and just actively removing them from your environment or your life. Can you give us a few more examples of how this principle of strategic avoidance or shunning might apply in our modern, often trigger-rich world?
Yes, this is where practical wisdom really meets self-awareness and boundary setting. It's about honestly recognizing your personal vulnerabilities, the specific situations or stimuli that reliably push your buttons or activate your cravings, and then taking deliberate steps to protect your tranquility and your virtue by avoiding them.
So it's not weakness, it's strategy.
Exactly. It's smart strategy. For
Mhm.
instance, if discussing politics on social media consistently leads you into unproductive, rage-fueled arguments that leave you feeling drained and angry for hours,
Mhm.
then Seneca's advice is crystal clear. Maybe just avoid those specific feeds, mute those particular accounts, or simply choose not to engage in those discussions online. If a certain sibling's life choices bother you incessantly and you find yourself constantly picking at them, criticizing them, or getting drawn into gossip that just fuels resentment and damages the relationship, perhaps the wiser, more temperate choice is to stop bringing up those topics or limit contact if necessary.
Hmm.
And this applies very directly to the subtle triggers of addiction or ingrained habits, too. If walking past a certain bakery always triggers an overwhelming craving for sugary treats you're trying to avoid, maybe change your route. If a specific group of friends invariably leads to excessive drinking or drug use,
Hmm.
you might need to reconsider spending time in that environment or with those individuals, at least for a while. If checking your phone first thing in the morning consistently sends you down a rabbit hole of mindless scrolling for an hour, maybe leave your phone in another room overnight.
Right. Removing the temptation proactively.
Yes. It's not a sign of weakness to shut out these known provocations. In fact, the Stoics would argue it's often a sign of strong will, a sign of self-knowledge and commitment to your goals. It's a conscious, rational decision to protect your hard-won tranquility and maintain your rational control. As Seneca might suggest, it's about first recognizing, I know the reaction I typically have in these situations, the craving that gets triggered, and then making the commitment. I'm not going to put myself in that position unnecessarily. I will consciously remove or avoid the stimulus from my life where possible. So maybe ask yourself, listening now, what trigger do you currently allow into your daily life, perhaps just out of habit or convenience, that you could actively remove or avoid to give yourself a better chance at freedom? Okay, so having thoroughly discussed the chains of desire and irrational emotion and explored this toolkit of powerful Stoic strategies to break them, let's now turn our attention to the ultimate goal. What's the point of all this effort? For the Stoics, it's aiming for a life of genuine freedom, deep tranquility, and ultimately human flourishing. Stoic ethics is fundamentally a species of eudaimonism.
Eudaimonism. Can you break that down?
Sure. It basically means that its central concern, its ultimate aim, is achieving eudaimonia, a Greek term often translated as happiness, but maybe better understood as human flourishing, living well, or living a life that is objectively good and fulfilling according to our nature as rational beings.
Okay, living well. And how do the Stoics say we achieve that?
Their core and perhaps most controversial claim is this: virtue is the only good. And not only that, but virtue is both necessary and sufficient for eudaimonia.
Whoa, okay. Virtue is the only good, and it's enough for happiness. That sounds extreme.
It does sound extreme to modern ears, accustomed to thinking of happiness in terms of external factors like wealth, health, pleasure, and success. But yes, that's the radical Stoic claim. For them, virtue isn't just one good thing among many. It's the ultimate supreme good. And this virtue isn't just about following a set of moral rules, it's fundamentally an internal state, a consistent and rational way of judging and responding to the world. It's what they call the perfection of agency. Through practical reasoning, meaning your ability to make rational, ethical choices is honed to its highest possible degree.
So true happiness, true flourishing, doesn't come from external circumstances at all, from things outside your control,
Correct.
but purely from the quality of your character, your
Right.
inner state, your virtuous actions and judgments.
That's precisely the Stoic position. Your eudaimonia is entirely dependent on your virtue, which is entirely up to you.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction, isn't it? It's not about what happens to us externally, but always about how we respond internally with our will, with our judgments. Now, to clarify this further, because it seems counterintuitive, the Stoics talk about things like health and wealth as preferred indifference. Could you explain what they mean by that? How do these preferred things fit into the picture if virtue is the only actual good?
Yes, this concept of indifference is absolutely key to understanding their ethical framework. And it's a point that often trips people up and leads to those misconceptions about Stoicism being cold or uncaring. They fully acknowledge that things like health, a reasonable degree of wealth, friendship, good reputation, these are certainly preferable.
Okay, so they're not saying you should want to be sick or poor.
Not at all. No one is suggesting you should actively seek illness or poverty or deliberately shun companionship. That would be irrational. These things are natural advantages. They are reasonably preferred if you can attain them virtuously. Crucially, the Stoics saw them as valuable material for virtue.
Material for virtue. How so?
Well, for example, having some wealth can provide you with opportunities to practice generosity and justice. Being healthy provides you with the energy and capacity to pursue wisdom, fulfill your duties, and help others. Having friends offers countless opportunities to practice kindness, loyalty, patience, and empathy. So these things have instrumental value. They provide the context in which virtue can be exercised.
Okay, so they're useful tools, but not the goal itself.
Exactly. They are indifferent in the specific Stoic sense that they do not in themselves make you a good or a bad person. Possessing them or lacking them does not determine your moral worth, nor do they guarantee or destroy your eudaimonia. If you lose your health or your wealth or even your friends, according to the strict Stoic view, your fundamental happiness, your eudaimonia, is not shattered because your virtue, your capacity for rational, ethical judgment and action remains intact, and that is the sole good.
Wow, that's demanding.
It is, and this leads to another important distinction. Joy, in the Stoic sense, is fundamentally active rather than passive. True, deep, stable joy comes from perceiving the virtuous quality of our own deeds, the things we do by conscious, rational choice. Whereas common pleasures, like enjoying a good meal or a warm bath, often arise from experiences that simply happen to us, sensations hitting our body. Stoic joy is therefore seen as more robust, more internal, and far less susceptible to the whims of fortune or the decay of the body.
So this raises that important question again. If virtue is the sole good, does that mean these ordinary joys we experience, enjoying a good meal, seeing a beautiful sunset, the simple company of a friend, are somehow meaningless or worthless to the Stoics? Are they really suggesting we should strive for some kind of austere, completely joyless existence?
No, not at all. And thank you for asking that, because it addresses another very common misinterpretation. The Stoics were perfectly aware of the natural value and importance of all the things people ordinarily count as goods and pleasures. They are not denying the intrinsic worth, in a common sense way, to ordinary goods. Pleasurable feelings, friendship, family bonds, these are not seen as merely instrumental.
Okay, so they do have value.
Yes, they have value, they are preferable. The Stoics simply insist that these things are not the ultimate source of eudaimonia, of true, unshakable flourishing. They can be enjoyed, they should be pursued with appropriate effort, as long as it doesn't compromise virtue. But our deep, unshaken joy, the very foundation of our flourishing, must come from within. It must stem from our character, from that unbroken tranquility and unending freedom that arises when external pleasures and pains have been banished from their position as the ultimate arbiters of our internal state.
So you can enjoy them, but don't depend on them for your core well-being.
Precisely. This inner joy, the joy derived from virtuous action, rational living, and alignment with nature, is, in their view, potentially boundless, unshaken by external storms, and unwavering. It allows for a fundamental peace and harmony of the mind, regardless of whether fortune smiles or frowns on you externally. It's about developing the capacity to enjoy these preferred external things when you have them, without being enslaved by the desire for them when you don't, or terrified of losing them when you do.
Okay, that makes more sense. It's about the relationship to those things. So putting this all together, it becomes clear that this Stoic path isn't some kind of quick fix or a destination you just arrive at one day and say, okay, I'm a perfect Stoic now.
Definitely not.
It really sounds like an unending journey. You mentioned the Stoic sage, that ideal, perhaps hypothetical figure who behaves perfectly, virtuously in every single situation. You said that's an ideal, a guiding star, not an actual end state you reach, and then just stop.
Absolutely. The Stoics themselves were very clear on this. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, they all considered themselves to be prokoptantes, meaning those who are making progress, students on the path, not finished sages. They constantly emphasize that one never arrives at the state of perfect wisdom and virtue.
So it's always about the practice.
Always. Stoicism is conceived as a continuous exercise, practice, discipline training, that ascesis we talked about. The commitment required is, as they put it, an unremitting commitment and seriousness. It demands daily effort, constant vigilance over your judgments, and a persistent desire to refine your character. Epictetus famously loved to remind his students of the constant hard work and serious, dedicated training needed every single day just to approach that ideal form of human excellence.
So what does this lifelong commitment really entail for us, for someone listening today who wants to apply these ideas?
It fundamentally means that Stoicism isn't just a theory you read about once in a book and then intellectually understand. It's not just collecting interesting quotes. It demands ongoing learning, yes, but more importantly, ongoing practice. It means rigorously training yourself in what Epictetus called the three disciplines. The discipline of desire, learning to desire only what's truly up to us, our virtue. The discipline of action, learning to act virtuously, justly, and kindly towards others and fulfilling our social roles. And the discipline of assent, learning to carefully examine our impressions and withhold judgment from those that are false or misleading.
Wow, a whole life's work.
It really is. For the ancient Stoics, philosophy was never just an abstract theory to be debated in academic halls. It was fundamentally a practical art of living, an ars vitae. And engaging in it seriously required nothing less than a spiritual metamorphosis, a deep transformation of one's values, perspective, and way of being in the world. It meant engaging in a way of life that constantly challenges your assumptions, refines your judgments daily, and strengthens your will against irrational impulses. The idea is to cultivate wisdom not just in moments of quiet reflection, but in every action, every reaction, every choice you make throughout your day. It's truly a lifelong commitment to training your mind, understanding your desires more deeply, and consistently choosing inner freedom over the potential chains of external things. It's about making philosophy an organic, integral part of your entire existence, constantly striving, constantly moving towards a more rational, consistent, virtuous, and ultimately harmonious life. It really is the ultimate a deep dive into yourself. Hashtag check out your...
Wow. Okay, this deep dive has really, I think, powerfully shown us that temperance, from a Stoic perspective, isn't about some grim denial of pleasure, some kind of austere, joyless existence. Not at all. It's actually about achieving a far greater, more stable pleasure. That unbroken tranquility and unending freedom that comes only from truly ruling your inner world. We've unpacked Epictetus's absolutely fundamental dichotomy of control, really understanding the difference between what's truly up to us and what isn't, and the immense, often hidden cost of getting that distinction wrong, of constantly chasing external ghosts.
Right. Wasted energy, frustration.
Totally. We've explored the radical Stoic view of emotions, not as alien invaders, but as judgments we actively make. And we walked through Seneca's three movements of passion, highlighting that critical point of ascent, that fork in the road where we can intervene and reclaim our rational mind before passion takes over.
That crucial moment of choice.
Exactly. And most importantly, perhaps, we've armed ourselves, and hopefully you, with a whole toolkit of actionable Stoic strategies for actually breaking free from those invisible chains. We talk about the daily discipline of the evening meditation for self-correction, the perspective-shifting power of negative visualization for gratitude, and that expansive view from above for equanimity. The crucial inner work of cognitive distancing, stripping value judgments, and decatastrophizing our fears. That potent, almost scientific questioning of our cravings that Marcus Aurelius recommended. And finally, the practical wisdom of either confronting our triggers through habituation or strategically removing them from our lives.
Yeah, a really comprehensive toolkit for inner freedom. And if we connect all this back to the bigger picture, the Stoics offer us this incredibly powerful and honestly enduring challenge to truly recognize that the greatest obstacles to our freedom, our happiness, our eudaimonia, are almost never the external circumstances themselves, but rather the internal responses we choose, the interpretations we make, the judgments we assent to. The path to temperance, paradoxically, is the path to a truly flourishing life, where genuine, stable happiness emerges as a natural byproduct of cultivating virtue, found not primarily in what happens to us, but in the quality of our own deeds, our own character, and the unwavering strength of our rational will.
So maybe final thought to leave you with, something to really mull over. Consider this. If you actively, consistently chose to value only what is truly within your control, your opinions, your impulses, your desires, your aversions, your judgments, what seemingly insurmountable desire, what stubborn addition, what ingrained habit might finally begin to lose its powerful grip on you.
And flowing from that, what new form of unwavering freedom, what deeper level of profound tranquility might you actually uncover in your own life, perhaps starting today, simply by making that conscious shift, by turning your focus inward towards the cultivation of your own inner world? What liberating choice might you make right now?